All right, so we just looked at how to create an Angular component from scratch, right? A brand new TS file. We chose the name of the class. We exported it. We annotated it with a component annotation. We configured the selector. We configured the template that renders, right? And then we registered that component in the ng module. Yes. But that really you wouldn't do that whole thing. Instead, you would use the ng component or create component command. So let's take a look at that. Right. So instead of doing all that by hand, what we do instead is that we're going to use the ng generate component command. Right. And that is going to create for us all these 4 different files. It's going to register a component brand new into our ng module, so we don't have to do that. Right? We'll make an entry there, and we'll create a dummy HTML file for us. It will hook up our component annotation. We'll point to this HTML file and say that's what I want to render. Right? It'll choose a default selector for us. Right? It'll create the class for us. It'll export it correctly. It'll annotate it correctly. Right? So we'll do a boilerplate component for us. Right? So if we do that, right, it will generate all 4 files, and all based on the name that you gave it, right? On the name that covered. Plus, it'll append to a dot component, right? Dot component, and it'll have the relevant extension, that CSS, that HTML, and the TS for TypeScript. Okay. Most of our work, yes. You'll be under the source file, on the source directory.
In an Angular project.
In an Angular project, yes. Actually, no. Even if you're in the project, I believe it'll put it under the source directory. It'll know where to put it. Yeah. Yeah, it'll put it under source/app. It'll put it under there. And so notice what it'll do. Also, it'll create a directory for your specific component. So it's already following some best practices. Right, that any new component, any new feature, right, should have its own dedicated directory, right? And any files that it's needed in there, all testing, styling, templating, controlling, will go all under there, right? So in there, notice it'll put all your files in there. They have all the same name and the different types they are. We're going to focus most of our time is going to be spent, dealing with the HTML, the view, and dealing with the component.ts, the controller. Okay? So most of our time will be spent there. Right. So if we open that up, right? If you say if you use it right away, hello world 2 in app.component, it will render the HTML. Right? In the HTML here, we can update it. Right, and we'll say, and we can open up the component.html, and we could say, hello world 2, and when it renders hello world 2. Okay. So let's take a look at the class that it created for us. Right, it created an export class hello world 2 component. Right, also implements on init. Right, it created an empty constructor for us. It created an empty ng on init for us. Okay, and here these are equivalent, roughly equivalent, to the React's constructor, right, and also to the component did mount lifecycle function in React. Right, so that's roughly the equivalent of those. Right. All right, so I'm gonna introduce here the way that the template and the controller talk to one another. Right? How do they refer to each other? How do they exchange data? Right? In React, what you did is that you declare state variables. Right? You say this.state, right? And then whatever variables you wanted, you put it in the state, or it would be in the properties. This.props, correct? Right, that the data lived in either of these 2 places, correct? And then from within your component, you would either, you would use the curly brackets, this.props. And then the name of the property, or this.state. And then whatever variable you have in there. Make sense? right? In Angular is slightly less involved. Basically, in Angular, you just declare a variable, a class variable, and whatever class variable you declare in the component, it is immediately available in the template, right, in the HTML template. Right? So for instance, here we're declaring a variable called message, right, equal hello world component, and right away in your in the HTML part of your component, right, you can refer to that variable using the double curly brackets, right, the double mustache, right. So double mustache message, and message here is referring to the variable that's declared in the component, right? And whatever you do to this variable immediately updates this on the page, right? They are now bound to each other. Whatever the controller does to that variable, it gets updated over here, and vice versa. If the view updates this variable, it's available in the controller. It's a two-way binding. Right? Whatever happens on the view, the controller knows. Whatever the controller does, the view knows. Make sense? Right? You can be a little more nuanced. You can control that certain things flow in only one direction. Right? That it could be a read-only variable. Right? That says no. You only have a read-only, so it flows only from the controller to the view, or from the view directly to the controller, and not double bound. We'll talk about that a little later. Everybody okay? So the data flows as follows. The component manipulates in TypeScript a particular variable, and that can be referenced in the double mustache in the HTML, which gets rendered with the actual value of that variable in the browser, right, dynamically in the DOM.